There are moments in life that feel deeply unfair, not because life has no meaning, but because your heart is heavy with disappointment. You've prayed, you've loved, you've hoped, and yet the people around you haven't changed. Maybe it's a spouse who still nags, a child who still rebels, a family member who still hurts you, a friend who keeps letting you down. You look around and everyone's life seems to be moving forward, except the people you care about most. So you ask God, why doesn't God change them? Why does this person still struggle? Why does the pain stay the same? It's a deeply human question, and it's one many believers carry quietly for years. We pray for people we love, for their healing, for their wisdom, for their hearts to soften, and sometimes all we see is the same behavior day after day. You begin to wonder if your prayers matter, if God is listening, if your faith is real at all. But listen closely, God's not ignoring the people you pray for. He's not absent, He's not deaf, and He's not unconcerned. There's a truth many Christians miss. God changes people in ways we often cannot see. Not always in outward behavior, but in inward growth. You see, sometimes the change that matters most is internal, not external. When Jesus walked this earth, He encountered people who didn't change instantly. He met religious leaders who remained proud. He met crowds who welcomed Him one day and rejected Him the next. He met disciples who misunderstood Him again and again. Jesus didn't stop loving them. He didn't withdraw His presence. He didn't say they must be unworthy. He simply continued to love them, and He continued to sow truth into their lives. Change is never God's job alone. It is always a shared journey between God's grace and human response. Sometimes we want God to change people for us, to fix them, to transform them, to make them act right. But God often invites us into something deeper, to love them through their struggle, to pray for them without needing instant results, to trust God's timing even when people stay the same. Jesus knew change doesn't always come quickly. Even after encountering Jesus, some people in the Bible did not change right away. Take the woman at the well. Jesus offered her living water, but she returned to town and became a witness before she fully understood. Take the disciples. They walked with Jesus for years before they were transformed from uncertain followers into bold proclaimers. Take Saul, later Paul, who went from persecuting Christians to becoming one of the greatest apostles. But that transformation took time and divine encounter. God's timing and God's way is not always instant, but it is always purposeful. When you pray for someone and nothing seems to happen externally, it's easy to feel frustrated or overlooked. But God works in layers, not always on the surface. Here is what God is doing even when people around you don't change. 1. God is working on their heart, even if you cannot see it yet. Transformation starts internally. A seed doesn't sprout on the surface immediately, but underneath roots are forming. You can pray and nothing appears to change, but roots may have already begun. 2. God is sometimes protecting them from something they're not ready for. Change too fast can overwhelm a person. Growth often requires preparation. God sometimes lets situations linger so that a person's heart becomes ready to accept change when it truly matters. 3. God is making you patient, compassionate, and faithful. Your prayers are shaping your heart, even if the answer is not yet visible. Jesus said that when you pray, your Father in heaven hears you. He didn't promise an instant result every time, but He always promised presence and purpose. And sometimes the most important change God makes through prayer is in you, not in them. Because sometimes the reason God doesn't immediately change someone else is because He is changing you first. You learn to love without expectation. You learn to pray without needing immediate results. You learn to trust God where you cannot see. That type of spiritual maturity doesn't happen overnight. It happens over years of quiet surrender and steady faith. And God is always faithful in the unseen. Remember this, God hears every prayer you've ever whispered for someone else. He preserves those prayers in His heart, even when the outcome isn't visible yet. That means God isn't ignoring them. They aren't lost. They aren't forgotten. They are in God's care, even when they look unchanged to you. And one day, when hearts are ready, God will move in ways you could not force, rush, or produce on your own. When someone doesn't change the way you hoped, it's easy to become tired of prayer. You think, I already prayed, what more can I say? But prayer is not just about getting an answer, it is about staying connected to God through the process. Here's how you can pray when people haven't changed yet. 1. Pray for patience. Patience isn't just waiting, it's waiting with peace. Ask God, Lord, help me trust you even when I don't see change. 2. Pray for wisdom. Sometimes your role is not to change someone, but to pray for how to love them well. 3. Pray for their heart, not just their behavior. Behavior can change without transformation, but God works on the heart first. 4. Pray for God's timing, not yours. You may want change now, but God knows the right season for transformation. 5. Pray for yourself in the struggle. God will sustain you even when others don't change. Your compassion and faith will grow stronger. Jesus never told his followers to stop praying because the result wasn't immediate. He told them to remain steadfast, persistent, and close to God, even when people around them struggled to change. And Jesus does the same for you today. Even when it looks like nothing is shifting, God is still at work, weaving quiet growth into every unanswered prayer. So don't stop praying, don't lose hope, don't stop loving, and don't stop trusting that God is still good, even when people around you stay the same. Because sometimes the change God brings is not in the moment, but in the heart that never stopped believing. You prayed for them. God heard you, and God will answer in His perfect time. There is a point where waiting becomes painful. At first you pray with hope, then you pray with patience. But after a while you stop praying through exhaustion. Because it's not just that people aren't changing, it's that their unchanged behavior is hurting you. You're affected by their words, their decisions spill into your life. Their habits create tension, disappointment, and wounds that don't heal easily. And you begin to wonder something dangerous. God, am I supposed to just keep accepting this? Is faith the same as tolerating pain? Why does loving them cost me so much? These are honest questions, and God is not offended by them. Jesus never taught people to stay in places where love becomes destruction. He taught compassion, forgiveness, and patience. But He also modeled wisdom and boundaries. Jesus loved deeply, but He also withdrew at times. He listened, but He didn't allow Himself to be consumed by everyone's demands. He showed mercy, but He didn't chase people who refused to change. Sometimes when God isn't changing someone else, He is teaching you something important. That love does not mean losing yourself. That prayer does not mean silence in the face of harm. That faith does not mean accepting every behavior indefinitely. God never asks you to be a victim in the name of faith. Sometimes God doesn't change the other person because He's trying to show you that it's okay to step back emotionally, to protect your heart, and to stop carrying responsibility that was never yours. You are not God. You cannot fix people, and you are not required to absorb pain endlessly just to prove your faith. Jesus invites the weary, not the self-sacrifice to destruction. If someone's behavior is breaking your spirit, it may be time to pray differently. Lord, show me how to love without losing myself. Show me when to stay and when to create distance. Teach me how to honor you while protecting the heart you gave me. Sometimes God's answer is not, wait longer. Sometimes it's, release what you were never meant to carry. And that release is not failure. It is obedience. At some point, every believer must face this truth. There will be people in your life. You pray for you, love you, forgive, and yet they may never become who you hoped they would be. And that realization hurts. But here is the quiet peace God offers in that place. You were never meant to change people, only to love them faithfully and trust God fully. Jesus did not change everyone who encountered Him. Some walked away, some stayed the same, some misunderstood Him to the end. Yet Jesus remained steady. He loved without desperation. He spoke truth without force. He trusted God without controlling outcomes. And that is what He invites you into now. When God isn't changing people around you, He may be inviting you to rest, to stop striving, to stop replaying conversations in your mind, to stop measuring your faith by someone else's progress. You can place them back into God's hands, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with peace. You can say, Lord, I have prayed, I have loved, I have waited, and now I trust you with what I cannot change. And in that surrender, something beautiful happens. Your heart softens without breaking. Your faith deepens without bitterness. Your peace grows without needing answers. God will still work in their life, whether you see it or not. But He will also work in yours, restoring strength where worry once lived. And one day, whether in this life or beyond what you can see, you will understand why God handled their story differently than you expected. Until then, you were allowed to rest. You were allowed to breathe. You are allowed to trust God even when people stay the same. Because God has never abandoned your prayers, and He has never abandoned you.